Ladies and gentlemen, this is your friend Charlie Hunter in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Thank you for joining us for the Reasonably Fine Art Talk. Today is August 25th, the day after my brother's birthday, where we always made peach ice cream. We always made peach ice cream on my brother's birthday, ladies and gentlemen, because my mother really liked peach ice cream. And I think that afforded a good excuse for making peach ice cream. I don't think my brother particularly cared one way or another about peach ice cream. But anyway, be that as it may, today I am so thrilled. One of my absolute favorite human beings and absolute favorite painters is our guest today. I don't know, I mean, you all must know him. If you don't know him, you are in for a spectacular treat. This guy can paint from here to breakfast and back again, and he'll bring you a cup of postum on his way. Today's guest, my friends.
I feel like I'm on the Prairie Home Companion.
Today's guest, my friends, is the slightly mouthy but always entertaining and wonderful human being, Mr. Douglas Fryer. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you for having me, Charlie. This is great. This is going to be fun.
Well, it may be fun. We'll see. We'll see. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Doug Fryer, we have a little bit. I used to manage a musician named Fred Eaglesmith, and Fred Eaglesmith used to say that people had said, so-and-so has a non-sexual male crush on me. And I have a non-sexual male crush on the way Doug Fryer paints. And much to my honor and slight terror, Doug Fryer seems to appreciate the way I paint. We've each taken workshops from one another. And last winter, I had a little soiree, a week-long soiree in Bellows Falls, Vermont, with Patrick Lee, John Porter Lassiter IV, Terry Mura, and Doug Fryer. And that was a joy. So, Doug, you are sitting in your brand new studio out there. Talk to us about it.
Well, actually, this is, I was telling Betty Sue a few minutes ago that this is really the first sort of productive thing that I've done in my studio. I was still moving furniture in yesterday. And I did a really poor job of vacuuming the floor this morning and cleaned off a couple of surfaces, but I have yet to do any art in the new studio.
Well, we'll take a tour of the new studio in a moment. But why don't we, for those people who are not familiar with Doug, or those of you who are, but just want a little shot of joy, why don't we take a tour through some of your recent works that you did? You had a show in June. You had 2 shows in June?
Yeah, I had a solo show in the Meyer Gallery in Santa Fe. And I was in a group show in a new gallery for me, a new gallery, the Altamira Gallery in Jackson Hole.
And how'd they do? Did you move some units?
Well, they're both just really exceptional galleries, and they did very well for me, in my opinion. Luckily they were able to put paintings in front of people and talk them into them, I guess. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
So it looks like there may be some technical issues going on backstage. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here in Bellows Falls. Betty Sue's in Austin, Texas. Doug's in Utah. And you know, computers, as Dan Richardson, who does most of my tech stuff in the Roots on the Rails trip, says computers are horrible. But anyway, now the technical problems seem to have been surmounted. And this is a piece of Doug's called Grassy Banks and Hedges in Calendar. And it's a 36 by 36. Talk to us, Doug.
Yeah, this is, I've taken a couple of extended trips to the UK and Ireland. And the last 6 or 7 years, I've gone twice, and for like 3 month stays, 4 months. And Callander is actually a village in Scotland, and there's this beautiful river that flows right through the middle of town, and I was really just captivated by just the beauty of the place, but also its potential for design, you know, for a painting. And I decided to do, you know, painting of reflection of the banks in the river, and sort of play up on the geometry of you know, dividing up this pretty rigid square. And then, you know, divide that square with a number of rectangles, and there's this certain rhythm of light and dark, and straight lines against some of the more organic lines. You know, natural subjects like the trees and the grass and the hedges, along with the more you know, structured architectural elements. So those are the kinds of things that I was really interested in this, and you know, to make it kind of a cool painting, you know, to organize the color palette into
Right.
these kind of cool rusty purples and blues.
Now, one of the things I was fascinated to learn in as I've gotten to know your work is that, well, your stuff often appears to be a literal rendering of a scene. Very often, you've manipulated it hugely, whether it's on the computer, melding various photographic elements together to create a starting armature, or as you are working in the studio, you will alter and redesign things. How close to a literal scene in Callander is this?
Well, you know, I think you would probably go to the spot and say, yeah, he was pretty faithful to the elements, you know, the subjects that are there. But it's certainly not photorealism. I've taken liberties with the subjects. I've certainly blurred out things, given motion to some of the you know, the edges of the picture. The roof of the building is completely blown away.
Right.
But that's me trying to be faithful to the way I really see things, not to how the camera sees things,
right,
and how I remember things. So it's a combination of what I see and what I remember, and also trying to make some indication of how our eyes and minds really see things, and not so much trying to be faithful to a photograph.
Right. And
but there is certainly an armature, like what you said. There's an armature under there that I'm trying to force the subjects into this design. You know, it's definitely so it doesn't appear like, you know, this is a snapshot from a camera that I took on vacation, and it's so pretty, I think I'll make a picture of it. This is me trying to make a design. Right.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we go through the pictures, keep in mind here, one of the things I really respect about Doug is he treats edges as an integral component of creating an image. He lets go of edges, and he'll make some edges hard. Look at the light hitting the ground plane. That's the greenish plane in the center. Look at the right side of that, ladies and gentlemen. That sharp edge that delineates the bank, and then how the edge, as it recedes, is much softer.
Right.
As you look at his stuff, pay attention to how he is manipulating those edges, because that is one of the things that I think in realism that people very often don't pay enough attention to.
Right, and you're exactly right. Those things in my photo reference would have been all sharp.
Right.
I made the decision as the painter to play with those things because you know, as I look at a particular thing in my environment, if I'm looking at that, everything else is blurry, emotion, interpenetrating, you know, and so I try to do that within the painting as well.
Right. Let's move on to the next image. So yeah, no, this one's not blurry at all, Doug. This one's just razor sharp, Talk to us a little about how you manipulate the foreground in this, because this is interesting. The hardest edges, I would say, are the far top of the hill against the sky. And so this one, did you like say, I'm going to create a foreground that I'm just going to let the foreground blur all the way?
Yeah, the reference I was working from is really not like this at all. I mean, it's quite different. So a lot of this is invented, you know, which is kind of fun as an what I wanted was this.
You froze. You said it's kind of fun.
It's kind of fun as an artist to invent things. It's, you know, being creative to invent things. So what I did is I tried to draw on my memory of driving down the highway with ranches and farm fields going by my peripheral vision, you know, in my peripheral vision. And then I glance because there's a subject, maybe there's horses, maybe there's a barn or fence line or, you know, whatever it may be. And I focus on that thing that's in the middle ground, but the whole time the foreground is in motion.
Right.
And in the picture, if I make something in the distance quite, you know, relatively sharper, relatively more important, I guess that way, I visually move into that middle ground or the distance very quickly, because everything else is softer. My attention latches onto that point of sharpness.
Right, and that really is, it's a way of storytelling. I mean, it's dimensional. It's thinking about the dimensionality of this admittedly two-dimensional surface. But if you say the point of contact for the viewer is the nominal subject matter, the thing their eye catches, i.e. the horses, that is the point of entrance. And so then you're telling a different story in the foreground than you are in the background. Mm-hmm. And again, I think very often painters, aspiring painters, don't think about the different emphasis that one may choose to place on the foreground, middle ground, and background. That how we choose to render those is very important in how the story is read.
Yes, you have to be very deliberate as you organize the elements. You can't simply copy your reference and expect it to be a good painting. It doesn't work that way. You have to make choices, deliberate choices, or deliberately play up on the serendipity of it all as you push around all the materials. Part of the story in this was, you know, painting the environment and then painting the horses and then having them both appear together. So there's this transparency there, which isn't in the photograph, but it's my way of saying I'm moving past this, and at one point I see the ground, then the horses in front of it, then I'm past the whole thing. That's something that happens along the way. If I simply copy the photograph, I wouldn't have any of those kind of intriguing elements. That it's like, that the horse on the right there is it's kind of ghost-like compared to the one more central.
Right.
Anyway, and the same thing kind of happens back in the hills and mountains in the distance. There's a kind of a coming and going. It's there, it's not.
Right.
Which certainly it doesn't happen in the snapshot that I may have taken as reference.
Right. Next image. Now this, you've been doing more in the time I've known you. It feels like you've been doing more of the still lives. And for you, is still life, I have a hard time just with kind of climbing into the nominal subject matter when I try to do a still life. Mm-hmm. What's been your process with still lives?
Well, I've always been interested in a lot of different kinds of subjects, and I certainly don't want to ever be. Did I freeze again?
Yeah, but you unfroze.
Okay. I don't want to be pigeonholed as a landscape painter or a barn painter or whatever it may be. I'm interested in just making paintings, and so if that's the landscape, if it's still life, it's a figure, a portrait, whatever it may be, I just want to feel free to do what I want to do. I've been painting still lifes, and I keep, I don't know, I'm still over the years really intrigued by the shape of a pear, so I've done a lot of pear paintings, and maybe the repetition of that makes them a little more mundane, but I think that the repetition maybe gives strength to them over the years as something that's more metaphorical, but I just think they're beautiful shapes. And the other thing about the still lifes or the figures or other subjects is they give you an opportunity to work in color combinations that if you just do the landscape, well, you use a lot of green and blue,
Well, you don't have to, Doug. I know a way around this.
Yeah.
Brown.
Brown.
Now, to me, very interesting in this is the central pair. You've placed that pretty much in the center of your composition.
Bullseye in the center. Yes.
Deliberate challenge you set up for yourself?
Yes. And that because you do that, and all of a sudden you say, this is important, and it's really tricky because if you do that, ordinarily it would seem like, well, you didn't have an imagination to make anything else, divide the rectangle in any other way. But if you put something central like that, and you have other elements balance it and make sense of the rest of the space, then what happens is that central element becomes balancing. It also says, I am really important Look at me here in the center. There's a reason for it.
Right, it's interesting. In a way, that's a very Western way of how we order information, because I believe, like in the Japanese ink paintings on those long scrolls, it's what was at the top, you know, or in traditional in Egyptian art.
There's a hierarchy.
Years ago, you know, the size. You know, this was the emperor, so he's this big, and these are the workers, and they're this big. Whereas we have this thing of, okay, it's in the center, so we agree that this is the nominal subject. And I wanted to ask you though, going back to your manipulation of photographs, or were you working from a photo in this, or did you have a bunch of pairs out for a number of days?
I worked from a photo. I do work from life, but this one in particular was done from photos that I then in Photoshop I'll manipulate colors. I'll say I want to make this a yellow painting. I want to make this a blue painting or a red painting or something like that. So I'll manipulate the colors and the values, and maybe I'll put a filter on to blur out areas, which tells me, Doug, don't get caught up in the detail over here. This is where you want to be, and it reminds me later as I'm painting from it. And then, you know, I'll print that out, and I like to work from a printout rather than from a monitor. So I'll print those out, and that'll be, you know, my reference. And it's only a reference as long as I can use it.
Right. Now,
a lot of times I'll put that photograph away and just say, I'm going to invent, you know, today I'm just going to work from imagination and invention, and just say, what could this shape be? Or what, you know, maybe take something and scrape across it and destroy half the painting and then have to resolve it and bring it back.
Right. Well, that's very much the Patrick Lee approach, is let's destroy a whole bunch of this painting and see what that does.
Right. And you see what he comes up with. He's just
brilliant.
An amazing painter.
Yeah. Now, in the far background of this, behind the crescent shape of the central pair, there's this echoing, more gentle arch shape that you've then, you know, you've kind of put it's kind of misty over. But that's a very interesting interplay, that you've got the hard edges in the shadows of the light raking away from the pairs, the cast shadow of the pairs, and then this hard edge in that crescent shape above the central pair. That's a really interesting set of design decisions there.
Yeah, I think what I decided was I wanted to take the rhythms that was happening in the group of pairs and simply repeat that, continue it out into space, where there's these more hard edges like the cast shadows of the pairs, and the rhythms of the, you know, the circles and ovals. Somehow continue that out, the energy of it, as it goes out into the negative space. Of course, you know, that wasn't there in reality. It wasn't there in the room. There wasn't something in the room with that shape. It's just that I thought it kind of needs an arc. So,
like Louis Kahn said about brick likes an arch. Now, several of the comments have been about your color world on this, the turquoise and the upper right hand area with the red and the turquoise. You're making color decisions there that I don't see, or I do see very small homages to them throughout the painting. I mean, there's the big bit of red and then there are a couple of little red highlights, and there's the big turquoise, and then there are turquoise notes throughout. But
Right.
when you were here last winter, I was fascinated with how the deep examination that you give to each of the decisions that you make. So I trust that you probably moved color around a lot on this one as you were building it. Is that?
Yeah. I think what was happening was that it was becoming a little bit more monochromatic in the painting.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with monochrome. Keep going.
It's true. At some point you'll branch out into cool colors, but you'll be fine. You'll be fine, Charlie.
All right.
It was becoming just a little bit the same across it, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to mix up some pure colors and just slap them down and then see where it takes me. And so what happened was, you get the turquoise on the upper right and the red, you get the purple on the far left, and up in the upper left-hand corner against the sort of more neutral gray, as a foil, against it. You get these vertical blues in the lower left, and all of a sudden I felt in the painting that it was like this shimmering quality, this shimmering sort of halation of light and color, that happens sometimes as in nature. Maybe it didn't happen when I was looking at these pears on the table, but it happens to me with I'm outside and there's brilliant
right
into the light, and my eyes are watering, and there's water in my eyelashes, and things start to shimmer. It's that refraction of light, and so even though those colors weren't in my reference, they weren't necessarily in the room. It felt magical, I guess, is the best way I can say. Once I put those colors in there and just said, this is just an abstract painting. Some of those shapes sort of look like pears, but this is an abstract painting, and I can do whatever I want with this. And I want to slap some color in there, move it around.
Right. That's one of my favorite Richard Schmid quotes. They used to say during the Putney Painters is, "You're the god of your own painting."
Yeah.
So next slide, Betty Sue. Okay.
Yeah, these are some. Well, we recently sold our house a couple years. It's been 2 years now. And someone just came up to us out of the blue and said, "Can we buy your house?" And we ended up selling it. And then it took a couple of years to design the new house. Get the land, design the new house, build it, and finally move in. But before it was just before we moved out of the house. In the West, they call them peonies. In the East, they call them peonies. I like to call them peonies. My peonies were blooming, and of course, once they bloom, they just want to explode. So I thought, I'm just going to cut these. I'm going to, someone else is going to have my peonies. So I thought, well, I'll cut them. I'll put them in some vases. I'll take some pictures, and maybe down the road I'll do some paintings. And so that's what I did. Finally, a couple years later, they went into this one and another one went into that show in Santa Fe.
I'm going to ask you one question. Again, fascinating decision to put the in the center foreground, coming off the picture plane, is that very defined bit of sunlight, or what
Yes.
we call sunlight, color element.
Color,
Yeah.
light.
And you've almost vignetted the table on the right and left, but that slash of color, that really leads the eye into the meat of the picture. What was your thought process in doing that?
Well, that foreground, that whole tabletop went through all sorts of stages, iterations, you know. I think at one point I thought the whole painting was sort of dull, and so I said, well, what if I put this brighter color in there? What would that do as a complement to that blue wall on the upper part of the painting?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it helps that blue gray become more chromatic. Just I'm not touching the blue wall, putting that sort of spot of brighter orangey pink there. It made more of a color statement. The other thing is that it becomes and this happens a lot in my paintings, and it almost happens subconsciously, but it becomes almost a reflection, a repetition of the shape of the petals that are at the base of on the table, at the base of the little honey pot. Mm-hmm. It's similar in size, similar in shape, and you know, I kind of liked that, and so you know, it kept it. Plus, now there's a kind of a 1, 2, 3 as you go from foreground and up. Right. There's the light on the table, the light on the petals on the table, and then the light on the flowers in the instead of 1, 2. Now we have a 1, 2, 3,
and it's a very different. The fact that it is reminiscent in shape, the 1 and 2 are reminiscent in shape, but completely different color temperatures and color world. Let's go to the next one. Now this one again, you are vignetting out on the right and left.
Yes.
And knowing that you don't do anything without thinking about it, talk to us about that.
Well, as you vignette, as you soften and blur some areas, other areas become sharper relative. You know, without even touching them, they seem to us to be sharper. And so in my photo reference, everything's in focus. But if I paint everything like the photograph, well, everything's important. So a lot of times I'll just say, Doug, 80% of this painting has to be soft. Has to be soft edge, has to be blurred, has to be a supporting element to others that are relatively more important.
Right.
What are and so if I start, you know, painting, if I feel like, yeah, that middle ground, the architecture, the hay bales, the receding fields, if I want that to be relatively more important without making them more photographic,
right,
I've got to blur out other areas, and that's the way my eyes see anyway.
Right.
So I'm trying to be true to that. Plus, it kind of just abstractly, just paint on a surface. I really enjoy looking at it.
Right.
Like the sky where it goes from the blue mountain range that is kind of rising up out of the valley. And I'm not sure if that's the ridge line or if that's a cloud that's covering it or if it's just paint on a surface. It doesn't matter to me. I just like looking at it.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, that's one of the funny things when I think about painters like you, myself, Pat Lee, Terry Mura, we all kind of would like to be abstract painters, but we don't quite dare go all the way there yet. We always tie it to a recognizable landscape. But then when there are purely painterly passages, it's like, oh, that's awfully fun. That would be fun. You know,
it's fun. It's just, yeah, it's not easy to do by any stretch. It's very challenging. It's as challenging as rendering out something realistically, as representationally. But it really is enjoyable to just have a dialogue with the materials and the tools and say, I wonder, what would happen if I just scrape this over there and put this and mix up this other color that I don't know. It's just a beautiful color. I'm going to put that on there and push it around and then see where it takes me. It is a very enjoyable process.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. Well, we're going to run out of time, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to run out of time. There was a question from someone in the UK asking if there's a chance of being able to see your work in a gallery over in the UK in the future. I think, Diane, you need to lobby your local museum to get them to do a little museum show. That's what I think. But do you show in the UK, Doug?
I don't, but I was actually going to be in Tetbury teaching a workshop in a few weeks, but it had to be canceled. There's nothing. I'm not showing there, but I'm planning in the future to regularly hold workshops in the UK, either in somewhere in the UK or in Ireland.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm gonna lobby to get you into a museum over there with all my pull with the British Crown. I'm gonna work on that. Now, this last painting, ladies and gentlemen, we were going to do a tour of Doug's new studio. We may have to just do, as someone said, we just need to do a part 2. We need to do a part 2 at some point.
Well, you have that still shot that I sent. There it is.
Yeah, but I don't. But that's it's talking about how one envisions one's space that makes it. It's a whole different thing. Let's go back to that final painting, though, because I think that's such a summation. That first cutting painting, final cutting, that is really an abstract painting. That you are hanging, you're hanging your abstract painting on some nominal subject matter, but you are playing with how, at least this is how I read it, you're playing with how far can one take the kind of the visual cues of the nominal objects in there, and just really, are those cows or are those little black rectangles? Is that hay bale?
They're hay bales, actually.
Oh, they're all hay bales.
You're not the first one to say nice cows, Doug. So.
I bet I won't be the last one either. Okay, so they're all hay bales, but they are receding. I get it now. So they're all on the same plane, receding back.
Yes.
Backwards. But this to me, knowing your ability to render a small bit of a painting with almost what appears to be almost photographic detail, and then leaving large parts of it blurred. This one, you're really challenging the viewer to decide how they want to read this painting, I think.
Right.
So talk to me a little about this. It's a very small painting too. It feels large to me.
Yeah, I actually did it's a similar painting, hay bales, big kind of golden hay bale painting. It's at the Altamira Gallery right now. It's a 60 by 60.
Whoa!
Or maybe, is that a 60 by? I think it is 60 by 60. Yeah. But I told myself, I want to do a yellow painting. You know, what could I do? And I want to make it more about the abstraction than about the representation of things. And so really all I needed was something to give an indication of a ground plane, and some things to give an indication of the verticals against that ground plane, and then just say that's enough. And then the rest of it was this color against that color, these kinds of marks, these patterns. I can have a mass of dark here and you know, have a foil of lighter value against it and work the edge. And I don't have to render it out as a tree. I don't have to render blades of grass. That's not what I'm interested in this painting. I'm more interested in the you know, just presenting to a viewer this sort of golden memory of a place.
Right. It's a tremendously successful painting. Tremendously successful, I think. So yeah, we should end for today, because I've been trying to keep these like shorter, but then it gets so interesting talking about it. I mean, I could keep having this discussion for another hour. But thank you so much for joining us today, Doug.
Well,
and
you were very kind to invite me. Thank you.
Would you be willing to do one in a few weeks in the future where we talk about your studio?
Oh, of course. Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. All right. And yes, we're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear the story of the tragic loss of Doug's beloved palette knife and his friend who came to the rescue with boxes and boxes and binders of palette knives. We're going to hear about the terror of the Adobe that was applied, that was the wrong texture to the exterior of the house. We're going to hear so many good stories. So join us again for the Reasonably Fine Art Talk. Thanks again, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
Take good care, everybody. Bye-bye.